So I was supposed to do this video on Marathon's 20th anniversary, but I was too busy playing Halo 1 multiplayer, but now I'm kinda out of that buzz. I'm ready to talk about why Marathon 2 is my favorite Marathon game, but there are gonna be other things that are Marathon related. So without a doubt, it is kinda weird that I was supposed to talk about the original Marathon on its 20th birthday, but I personally feel like Marathon 2 really took everything that Marathon did and just simply improved it in many ways. With that said, the game itself is pretty much very similar to the original game. However, I always felt like Marathon was kind of more similar to Wolfenstein 3D, where the game really suffers similar symptoms of Wolfenstein 3D, like levels that totally have the same feeling or vibe, or a lot of the maps are very corridor driven, and then you have Marathon 2 where the maps are more open and there's more colors to it. It's like Bungie decided to be inspired by the map design by Doom. I also liked how Marathon 2 seems to have a lot more interesting encounters going on for itself, and of course you got the things that I also liked how Marathon 2 seems to have a lot more interesting encounters in the combat aspect, where Marathon 1 was very close quarters driven, while this game really seems to have a lot of things going on for itself. And of course, you got the things that makes Marathon 2 its own game, like the dual wielding shotguns or really cool enemies like the cyborg, which in my opinion really does make some of the fights interesting, since Bungie did a great job at using them for right situations when you fight them. And to be honest, a lot of the new enemies, quote unquote, are pretty much similar to the ones in Marathon 2, like the Flicta replaces the Wasp, and the Enforcers are also changed too. But I always enjoyed the overall enemy design of Marathon 2 over the original game. On top of that, I just think it was a better game overall. It was more funner, more better in terms of the gameplay design, and even the art aspect, like how I said the enemies looked more better, and I also enjoyed the new art design of the weapons. Basically every aspect in Marathon 2, to my eyes, seemed better. And I personally think Marathon 1 only shines in having more close quarter fights, which is what I generally prefer. It had a better atmosphere, it was much more darker and surreal, and I guess you could say it had an actual soundtrack, but there were some songs that I really couldn't stand at times. But I'm not just going to focus on Marathon 2 being the better Marathon game than 1, because both games are fairly identical in like a basic standpoint of how they played, and I guess I could talk about them since I am a fan of this series, and I'm sure many people don't really know much about Marathon, so here it goes. I always feel like Marathon as a whole is very unique, since for its time it really did do a lot of things that you didn't see many shooters try to do, like alternative weapon modes. It had a story, health station, dual wielding weapons, and so on. It really did do a lot of interesting things to the genre it was in. However, I believe it didn't get much mainstream success due to the game was mostly a Mac exclusive, and it's definitely not like Doom, where I always feel like Doom is more mainstream and accessible for most people to play, but Marathon, on the other hand, it's definitely a painful experience for someone who never picked up any of the games, and you will probably find it pretty bad on your first playthrough. For example, I remember a lot of people who never who never played Marathon tried out the 360 version for Xbox Live Arcade, the 360 port of Marathon 2, and basically on GameFAQs there was a thread on how confusing and perplexing the game was, and eventually people would argue about which game was better. Was it, Marathon, or was it Doom, and all of that jazz. But not only that, the 360 version didn't really get good reviews too. It's not because the port itself was bad, but the problem was the game just didn't seem to hold up that well compared to other well-known old school first-person shooters that was on the 360 arcade library at that time. That's the problem I always have with the Marathon series. I do feel like it does show its age a lot, but at the same time, it was so unique for its time, and even to this day, since I really just adore its style of gameplay. I do like how it is a game that really rewards people who put in the time to master its content, and then you will see the true satisfaction of the game. It's basically a cult game. It's not for everyone, but there are people that will find its charm attracting, like I did when I first played this game on my 360. And yes, this was actually my first marathon experience. I remember I wanted to play an old school first-person shooter just to fulfill my need for Halo Reach, because I, wanted to play that game so bad, and I felt like playing some sort of, single-player driven shooter at that time. And basically, I just wanted to be distracted from Halo Reach. I decided to think about playing this game or Heretic for the PC. I decided to go with Marathon 2, but I also remember, about playing the second game on my PC, because I already knew the trilogy was free during that time. But being a big Bungie fan, and I had strong faith that I would end up liking the game a lot, I decided to buy it on my 360 due to those reasons, and because I was more of an Xbox gamer at that time, and I still am. I had my annoyances with the game, when I first played it. It was definitely a game that really grows on you the more you play it. So the more I played the game, the more I really started realizing its merits and its powerful attracting charms, where it was definitely one of my favorite Xbox Live arcade games that I own to this day. But yeah, 2 was really the one that got me into Marathon. Eventually I wanted to try out all the Marathon games, and those are on PC and Mac because of the Alif 1 port. But when I really look back at all those 3 Marathon games I played, 2 is really the one I do enjoy wholeheartedly at the end of the day. I am aware that Bungie is planning to do a reboot for this series, and I really don't know what to say since there's not really much word going on. But I do remember that Activision would let Bungie make a new Marathon if Destiny was a hit, and Destiny is currently a hit, so we're going to see what will happen in the future. I don't know if Bungie's going to make it more like the trilogy, where it's definitely only targeted for the fans and such, but I don't know, man. Anything can possible. They could totally try to make this game more mass appealing to today's gamers, or even try to make it more appealing to people that were more into the Doom style of games. But I don't know, man. All I want is, a really fun game to play, and I think Bungie will try to find that balance. I always feel like Bungie should try to, admit that Marathon does show its age, and they should incorporate some things to make the game feel more up to date, but make it feel like a retro game at the same time, because I do play a lot of these type of shooters, and I am a fan of a lot of series, but it does kind of suck that Marathon does show its age compared to like Doom or Quake. With that said, that is pretty much it for the video. Tell me what you guys think on how I feel about the Marathon series. What are your guys' favorite Marathon games, if you ever played any of them? Because I always like to hear people's different opinions and stuff. Like, I know some people really like Marathon 1 because it was a lot more darker. I guess some people like Marathon Infinity because the map design was much more complicated than Marathon 1 and 2. So yeah, it's always cool to hear different people's opinion, and I pretty much gave you guys mine, and I'm out.